I wanted to talk about my favourite rivalry in boxing. It's not the most glamorous rivalry, it's not the most international rivalry, it's not Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao, but it's Billy Joe Saunders versus Chris Eubank Jr. Admittedly, it's a fight that is mainly relevant to the UK. It's a fight when it took place last year that was between two guys who are kind of top 25 level middleweights at the time. But for me, it was a very enjoyable build-up, a very enjoyable fight, a really difficult puzzle to solve. I did pick the winner, I did pick the correct outcome, and I'm more than ever looking forward to seeing this rematch. The build-up today was covered by IFL TV. I recommend everyone check it out. There's an extended press conference featuring the two guys. It's over half an hour long. I've just watched it. There's also interviews with Billy Joe, Frank Warren, that I've got to go back and watch again in a minute. But yeah, very, very exciting build-up. A great deal of talk going on already. Now, Billy Joe Saunders is quite a divisive character. You know, people don't like him because of some of the things he says. People don't like the style of boxing he has. But I rate him as a boxer. I really enjoy the kind of skillful, slick, jabbing, amateur-style boxing that he has. And I think his chat, obviously some of the things he says are very offensive, but if you take them with a pinch of salt, the guy does have some basic comedy value. To me, he was running rings around Eubank Jr. today. He was spot on about Eubank Jr.'s fake belt. I think at one point Billy Joe said that belt's only fit to hold your trousers up, and he's spot on. Chris Eubank Jr. parading around like he's some sort of world champion. Let's be honest, Gennady Golovkin is the WBA middleweight champion, and Danny Jacobs is a more legitimate middleweight champion than Chris Eubank Jr. He's the third champion in that division, and him having that Mickey Mouse belt adds literally nothing to this fight, which in Britain is almost bigger than a belt. Now, it's a shame that Eubank isn't fighting Spike O'Sullivan. That would have been a very, very good fight. That would have been a really entertaining matchup. I would make Eubank a favourite in that fight, but for me it's more interesting than him fighting Les Serrington. Let's hope Eubank doesn't lose at any point, because at that point, if he was to lose again, and I think that's possible based on his defensive frailties, but if he was to lose again, the Billy Joe Saunders rematch goes out the window, and that's the biggest payday for both guys. Yeah, I know Billy Joe's going to fight for a world title against Andy Lee or Peter Quillen. Realistically, Peter Quillen's the number 2 guy in the division. If Billy Joe was to take a loss to Peter Quillen, and that is a very tough fight for Billy Joe, I still think the Eubank Jr. fight's on. I think if Billy Joe is, European champion, he loses in respectful fashion to Quillen, I don't think that disturbs the Eubank Saunders rematch. I think the history and the story there, is still adequate enough for that fight to go ahead. But I do think if Eubank was to lose, having lost the first time round, the rematch would be less interesting. So I think it's absolutely key that Eubank keeps winning, and I think Billy Joe's got to perform credibly, even if he's unsuccessful against the Lee Quillen winner. Today, I really sensed a change in the demeanour of Chris Eubank Jr. He's always been a very cool, very collected guy. Today I didn't see that. There was a kind of desperation coming across from him, a huge urge to get this fight on. He kept trying to make dodgy claims about the amount of money he brought to the table, the credibility of his belt, what the people want to see. He was really pleading his case to get the fight on. He wasn't this cool, calm guy saying that he was going to be the next Floyd Mayweather and looking really slick. He was desperate, and he was talking a lot more than he's used to. He wasn't the icy, composed figure that we've seen in the past. Today we saw him, I think at one point Frank Warren says, Spike O'Sullivan, he's a nice guy. And, Eubank cut in, he sort of lost his cool a bit. He said, he questioned Frank's statement. And for me, he very, very much looks like a guy, chasing a fight. And Billy Joe's the one with power. And I liked it when Billy Joe laid down the law and said, look, when we do this rematch, it's on my terms. If you don't turn up to press conferences, if you mess around, you lose the fight. And Eubank Jr. backed down, he said, fair, look, you can have whatever you want if we agree to the fight. So, I like that. I like the fact that Billy Joe called him out, that he didn't actually win the fight. He asked everyone in the room, put your hand up if you think Chris won the fight. Put your hand up if you think Billy Joe won the fight. Realistically, that fight, you could make a strong argument that Chris Eubank Jr. would win a rematch. I accept that. But you cannot really, in my opinion, make a strong argument that Eubank Jr. won 7 of the 12 rounds that night. Arguably, Chris Eubank Jr. won the rounds he did win better than Billy Joe Saunders. But Billy Joe was 5-0 up after 5. And there's no way Chris whitewashed him for the rest of that fight. There is no logical, sensible argument that Eubank Jr. won that fight. And whilst Eubank does bring a lot of name, he does bring a lot of money, he does bring a lot of intrigue to an occasion, Billy Joe's absolutely right to be fighting for a world title. The money involved, the glamour of winning a world title. And let's be honest, I'd make Billy Joe a strong favourite over Andy Lee. Lee was getting outboxed badly in his last 2 fights, but his punching power saw him home with 2 sort of against the run of play knockout shots. Billy Joe, he's better than the guys Lee's been in with recently. Billy Joe's durable, he's tough, he can take a shot, he's a hard man. And I don't see, Andy Lee ending him with 1 shot like he's been able to do recently. For me, Billy Joe, he can outbox Lee. He's got better defence than Lee. He's got a better jab than Lee, better movement than Lee. He's an all-round, more advanced fighter, power aside. And I think that, if Lee can knock out Quillen, Billy Joe, he really does have a shot of winning that belt. And then hopefully we can see this rematch then for a real world title. Not the WBA interim 3rd string title, but a real world title. That's my thoughts. I really enjoyed the build up to this. This fight is simmering away really nicely already, and we're still 2 or 3 fights away from it. I think Frank Warren's doing a great job. I'm going to try and go to the fight on May the 9th at Wembley. Myself and my brother will try and attend. It looks like a really good occasion, and very much excited to see the press conferences with these 2 guys and see the performance on the night. I think this is going to build something much more special than the likes of Bellew, Cleverly, Fury, Chisora. I think this is going to be a super fight in Britain. Let me know your thoughts. How did you view the press conference? How do you see the rematch going? Any requests, tweet me at Boxing Gossip. Send me an email, boxinggossip@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.